This is Inspirational Women, a weekly series shining the spotlight on female trailblazers making a true difference in our community. Once again, here is Kate Daniels.
Rebecca Galli is an author and columnist who writes about love, loss, and healing. Becky's life has had quite a dose of challenges and losses, and this is not a competition for who has had the most. But the important thing here is how Becky has navigated the losses, and with her writing about them, she and her writing are an inspiration for us. Becky joins us to provide insights into her most recent book, Morning Fuel, Daily Inspirations to Stretch Your Mind Before Starting Your Day. Rebecca Galli, good morning, and thank you so greatly for being with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure, Becky. And I'm saying Becky because you're Rebecca, but you're also Becky to your friends. So we may interchange that. I guess that works too, doesn't it?
It does. My dad used to say I was Rebecca when I was in trouble. So most of the time I'm Becky, but every once in a while, life happens.
So if your dad said that, then you are just being good most of the time.
That's my goal.
That and being optimistic, and then having a big heart to want to share that, to inspire others and share that with others. That seems to be so much of what your life is about. Am I right?
That's right. I was very fortunate, and it's one of those things you don't realize at the time, but my parents were very positive people. And they were, my dad's mantra was what's planned is possible. And my mom was, you got to get your ducks in a row. And so we just kind of grew up in that environment where you were always looking for positive things, acknowledging positive things. And that's come to be very helpful with me as I've had to face some tough challenges in this life.
Yes. I've only seen some of what you've encountered here in print about you, and you actually wrote about this. You have a memoir that came out some years ago that you really recapped so much of these challenges that you faced in your life. One of which, to me at least, is such a big one, is that you now live your life in a wheelchair, right?
That's correct. 28 years so far.
Oh my goodness, that's like someone's lifetime. But yeah, I think that's an important story. And would you mind giving us some of the background of that?
Yeah, sure. So, no, I'll back up a little bit because I think the way that our family and the way I learned how to deal with challenges had to come from at age 20 when I lost my 17-year-old brother in a water skiing accident. And I didn't, again, realize it at the time, but I watched my parents cope with the loss of their only son, my brother Forrest. And I learned a lot about that we grieve differently. My parents grieved very differently than my sister and I. My dad could be very public about it. My mom went to support groups. I had my college buddies that helped me move along, but my sister was 17 months apart from my brothers in age. So she actually wanted to be with him. And so they had to get her counseling and support to kind of move through that. But I watched how they coped with it. They kept moving. I've had a couple I was married in the first part of my 20s were great. After that, I married the man of my dreams, went to the college of my dreams, and our life was going according to plan. I was 29 when I had our first child, and my husband had finished his MBA, and that was a beautiful pregnancy. But my next two children had special needs. I had one with epilepsy, one with autism, and one with a blood disorder when he was born that he eventually grew out of, but it took a toll on the marriage. I became divorced, and 9 days after I was divorced, I got this rare inflammation of the spinal cord called transverse myelitis that affects 1 in a million. And a third recovery recover, a third don't, and a third have some partial recovery. So I did not have any recovery with this. And the kids at the time were 3, 4, 6, and 9. So it was a very huge adjustment. But I got a lot of support from a lot of people. So been a nutty life.
And here you are, though, with this magnificent smile. I hear the joy in your voice. You've written the memoir about all of this in your life, and now we're going to get into some of Morning Fuel, which you are able. No, you really do a great job and are able to write a book like Morning Fuel, which is filled with daily inspirations, I think based on the fact that you've lived through so much and you've known how to navigate through it, because as you just recapped, you had the foundation with how your parents modeled being able to handle challenges and tough things as well as great things in life.
Very much so. And I think one of the habits after I lost my brother, I was really struggling at age 20. I hadn't experienced anything like that, didn't know anybody that had. And my dad suggested that I start journaling, to try to get these feelings out and on the paper so they wouldn't be recurring. And I really kept that practice through every one of these kind of life-changing events. When my son had seizures at age 3 months and my daughter started presenting with autism and having speech delays. So that journaling really came into play after I was paralyzed, because there was a period where I had great hope I would walk again. They had said 2/3 basically get some kind of return of function. So I was like, after everything else, maybe it's my turn to get a good outcome here. But in the process, my dad had written a column about my paralysis. This is 1997, before there was regular email, blog, social media. There was none of that. But email had just started, and I got an email from a friend, Scott, who was a good high school buddy, but we'd lost touch after college. And he said, is that you? And I was like, I wonder if this is me, if this is the final me. And so I updated him on my life, my marriage, my kids, their medical situations, my paralysis. And then I started sharing stories with him about what it's like to live life in the wheelchair. And so these stories he started forwarding to his friends, and I forwarded to other families and friends. And this was back, no group list. You copied and pasted and sent it to somebody once you got their email address. And somebody said, these are kind of cool little stories. You ought to see if you can get it published. And I had a friend that helped me polish one up, and it became an op-ed in the Baltimore Sun. And that really started my writing career. That one question, is that you? And the practice of journaling helped me kind of share my life in a story form that seemed to resonate with people. And that led to a 12-year column, that I wrote for a local newspaper and other op-ed pieces. And that became the basis of the book. I had a lot already written. It was just kind of seaming those together on the memoir, Rethinking Possible. And then with Morning Fuel, people would ask me after I would do book talks or book club events with Rethinking Possible, how do you keep going? And morning readings were a practice of mine. And I thought, why not write what I do, which is have a little morning fuel with stories and reflective thoughts and journaling. So I did.
Oh, that is just so incredible. And really finding how we are given these answers, I guess they are. They're given these road posts in our life if we just pay attention to them, and it really begins to create what is, as I see with you, Becky, this really wonderful life that Yes, so many tough challenges that for one person to take on, and yet each of them seems to have had some kind of gift that has made you stronger and more present and made you be the beautiful woman you are.
Well, thank you for that. I think you make a really good point, though. So often when you're in the middle of it, you need to turn around and look at the evidence that, you've made it through a lot of tough things. And you can kind of get encouragement from that it might not be easy, but you'll figure out a way if you have the right people supporting you and leaning into the right direction. And even if you make a mistake, you can still course correct or learn from it as long as you're learning and being open to that learning. I think it can be a positive thing. That doesn't make it easy or something I would ever want, or I still don't. I would love to change all of it if I could, but you have to accept what you can't control and just keep moving.
Exactly. And we need to be reminded of that. And you were having that in your life. Of course, your brother's death, a teenager, for your parents had to be devastating, because we hear people say having to bury a child is not what we expect to do as the parent. So how tough for them, and yet that they were modeling, they did what they needed to do to survive for themselves, but they were really showing you, their kids, how to navigate this as well, get through something that's really so devastating.
And as I hit their ages, like what age they were when my son was 17, and I thought about what it would have been like for my mom, it was even a deeper appreciation for what she had to get through and how she was still a mom to my sister and me. But we kind of lost that part of her that, because she no longer had a boy in the family. And that was a big shift for us. And I can remember one of the most stark realization of the change was when we went out to dinner. It was always, oh, it's a table of five. And then we'd say a table of four. And it just like got us all right in the heart, how changed our family unit was. But we really reconfigured to accommodate that in a way. But it was, we had to give ourselves time and we had to be creative about that. Like, how much do we honor and remember versus, keep them close but not obsess, and I think that's really important when you're going through a deep grief, is to be very honest about your situation, like how you're feeling, and get those feelings out. And then also, what are your resources to help you keep moving? Because sometimes we need help with that. It needs to be a professional or a counselor or someone that's close to you. I call it, who's in your boat with you that can help you keep moving through the adversity, because you don't want to isolate. You don't want to be so self-absorbed that you aren't, because it can be very dark and lonely when you do that. And that's one of the things I think they modeled for us, and that I always suggest if anybody's going through a tough time to be honest about it and get support.
Really, words of wisdom to do that, to be aware that there is help. I think so much help, and it's available even online now, which makes it easier, at least for people who are in more remote areas, to be able to connect with someone professionally, to be able to deal with this. And really, at the very least, what I have found in my own life is reading, finding material that inspires me and is kind of a guide, as you share with sharing your life, how that is encouragement. I may not be able to then find or connect with a medical professional, but someone's story just gives me some sparks of hope and light. So I think that is something also to consider in our healing journey.
Yes, I agree. It's been helpful to me through the years. I'm going to try to do it every morning. And on my best days, I see the sun come up, and I have several different books I read from. And I'm hoping Morning Fuel will be some, ones that can be helpful to others. It's reading and it's reflecting too, like letting it in a little bit and see if it can seep in your life and prompt you to think of something in a different way. It's seen my editor says, you need a lens when you're writing your book. What is the lens that you're looking through? And with Rethinking Possible, my lens was love, and if it didn't show how love could help you get through tough times, then it didn't belong in the book. It was really this theme of how love can give you the courage to keep going. But with Morning Fuel, it was every entry in there is designed to either inspire, encourage, or make you think. So if it didn't meet that criteria, it didn't go in that book. So it's a way to keep focused as you're writing and editing and making sure that you're connecting to the reader in a consistent way, because I like to hope that it's a companionship. They offer companionship on a journey that they would experience what I hope they experience.
I think you really hit the mark. Or what did they say? They hit the ball out of the ballpark, because it does feel like what you have just described, Becky, and it's succinct. It doesn't take but just 2 or 3 minutes, but it gives us something to think about and hold within our heart as we go throughout the day, because morning fuel, it's important, as you stay here, to start your day off strong, and such words of wisdom and hope do that for us.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that compliment. That means a lot. One of the things that I hope happens, and it came out in late last year, and a lot of people gave it as a Christmas gift, or as really any time of gift, because they could read the same entry with a person that was, not nearby, their child or their friend they haven't seen, and then they would have a little chat about that. What did it mean to you? And it was weird, it was kind of cool. They were on the same page.
Literally.
and could talk about it. I was like, I love that. Just made me so happy when people were writing to me and like, yeah, I gave it to my daughter who's here, and my son who's there. And so that brought me joy.
Oh, yeah. And to know then, yes, that you were making a difference in people's lives, that they were taking this and fashioning it into their own lives, and that it really was making a difference. Well, what could you ask for more than that?
Yeah, connection is so important. And if you need a little fodder for the connection, a little something to talk about, I know with my kids, they're not nearby, and I cherish every moment I have with them. And so if I can come up with a common denominator topic, I'm all about that. So hopefully it helps others too.
And it may be even more so if we're going through a tough period. Perhaps it's a job loss, or there's just so much uncertainty that what is going to happen tomorrow or the next day. But here there's positivity, there's optimism. So we can read this, and it gives us, you were talking about what lens do we have. Isn't that so important? What lens we use as we go through the day? Because if we're going to expect disaster, we're like a magnet, I think. But here, if we hold this, you used the word sparkle, starting the year off with sparkle, right? If we hold that kind of sparkle in our heart, it really puts a different lens and view on the day.
It does. And, that's one of the techniques that I use when I feel like, I call it being on the edge of a pity pit, where it's like, oh boy, what am I thinking about? I'm going to start thinking too much about it. And I talk about these shelves that I have in my mind, where I put the hard things, like the paralysis, my body is misbehaving, or, an issue with my daughter who has autism, or revisiting the date of my brother's death. All of these are big losses, but I kind of park them on the shelves in my mind, not to deny that they exist, but to give them a place where I'm not looking through it. I'm not looking through the loss. I'm managing the loss and putting it to the side, and I'll bring it down kind of when I'm ready to deal with it. And for example, when I was writing Rethinking Possible, those were some deep things to relive, those days when we realized we were losing my brother, and he died, and the funeral and all of those things. And but I knew to be authentic, I had to go down there to get those feelings and be genuine with them. So I would tell my sister, okay, I'm writing about Forrest today. It's 9:00. I'm gonna come out at 5 o'clock, and I just want you to call me to me because I'm sure I'm gonna cry and I'm sure I'm gonna get through it, but I just want you to call me to make sure that I came out.
Yeah.
So so it's like, okay, I'm taking it off the shelf. I'm gonna live through it. But I'm gonna put it right back there and make sure I had somebody checking on me at the end. And that worked.
Oh, such wisdom. I mean, I'm just so enthralled with the way you approach all of this in your life because suffering that death at such a young age, it lives with you forever long. And you could be living a dead life, but know that your brother wouldn't want that. Your parents weren't doing that. They wouldn't want that for you. So knowing how to navigate to still honor his memory and who he was and who he is to you, but yet also honoring yourself and doing what you need to do. That's what I really hear is going on and what anyone going through challenges, we all will have them or have had them, how we can go about this in a very constructive way.
One of the things I say is that grief is a strange companion.
Mm.
You never know when it's going to come tap you on the shoulder. It's not one and done. It's forever. And I think the deeper you love someone, the more frequent or the deeper that revisit can happen. And I've come to kind of, in a strange way, welcome it, as you say, honor it. Like it just means that I really loved him and I really miss him. And when grief comes, it's like, hello, my friend, here you are, and I'm giving you this spot in my life. But I'm not going to let you ruin everything that I've got planned. I'll just give you some time and honor that. And that way it's less of a surprise when it comes and more of a respectful period that I can give that feeling in my life. And when you had quite a few of them, you just, I wish things had been different, but it wasn't. And I think that comparative lens of what you wanted life to be and what it winds up being can provoke a lot of feelings that are hard. Mm-hmm. But most of them have to do with, loss and grief.
Yes.
So managing that has been something I've learned how to do pretty well, and not always 100%. I mean, you can't control everything, but I try to have some strategies for it.
Yes. And it's, we're the beneficiaries of your really working with this and being, I would say, at least 99% successful, sharing it with us for us to learn how we can cope with it and live our life that way.
Well, and it really is beneficial for me too, because the connections that I make are incredible, and it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I think that's the whole point in reading and connecting with other people and their thoughts and stories, is to not feel alone, that you're in a shared journey.
Right. And certainly there had to be a lot of grief, and maybe this grief still lives when you have had to live your life in a wheelchair. And 28 years, that is like a lifetime. But the grief, there was grief, I'm sure. And how do you navigate that?
Well, I I say that I kind of became two people, because I'm paralyzed from my waist down. And from my waist down, I call her my 2-year-old because she's very unpredictable, like a 2-year-old. Sometimes she behaves, sometimes she doesn't behave. I kind of give her grace when she's having a bad day and give her time. But it's made me be a lot less flexible and a lot less, I guess, dependable, in a sense, where I can make a plan with somebody. And before paralysis, it was like 99% sure I could make it. But if my 2-year-old's having a bad day, then then I have to have a plan B, or just flexible friends, and just tell them up front. I was recently in the hospital. I thought it wasn't going to be for a few days, and I wound up being there 11 days. And so I had to like reschedule things for that. And I hate giving in to her. You know, I wish I were more in control of her, but I've had to accept that. And it's still a lot. And now she's aging and I'm aging, although she's mostly 2 and the upper part's getting to be older by the minute. But I think that's what's planned is possible. It doesn't say it's guaranteed. And I've learned to have a lot of alternative plans because of the paralysis, for sure.
Yes. And I feel with how you've talked about this and talking about a 2-year-old is humor. It seems to be a way to just deal with this and get to the next moment through the next day.
I do. Sometimes I'll look at my life and I'll say, sometimes you just gotta laugh. You just have to laugh. It's just ridiculous. How does all this stuff happen to me? I don't know. What did I do? I didn't do anything. All of those crazy questions. And I know in my heart that I've tried to be a good person, that these aren't consequences for anything bad that I have done. It sounds like, why did you keep having children with all these special needs? And we went through testing after my son, and they said it was an anomaly. We went through testing after my daughter, and they said it's an anomaly. And so, we weren't cavalier about any of this, and we took things seriously. And what happened to me, 1 in a million.
Yeah.
So it's I think what happened, my dad said this to me, and I've really taken it to heart. Sometimes we really have to just learn to live with the questions. Instead of seeking the answers that can be maddening. We have to learn how to live with the questions. And I think I'm not a pro at it, but I'm a well-practiced amateur when it comes to living life with the questions. And I think that's been helpful.
Well, that certainly sounds like more words of wisdom. How you're wrangling with it helps us to consider that we can wrangle with whatever our stuff is that's going on. And Becky Galli, I am just so happy that we've had this opportunity to have a connection and learn about you and how inspiring you are. And I feel, give us, especially with Morning Fuel, a way to look at some positive encouragement, to look at good stories that will help us get through each and every day.
Well, it's been an honor to talk to you. And, one of the things I wound up doing kind of last minute in the book is in the back, I did put some topics, like general topics, when you're dealing with uncertainty, when you're dealing with difficult holidays, when grief revisits, and listed some of the entries that particularly go with that topic, because that's what I found sometimes is like, they aren't in any order, but at least I can put a couple topics in there if that's helpful to people. And there's a place to journal about them too.
Yes, that could be then the beginning of our journaling journey if we haven't done that, right?
That's right.
And of course, the book is available through all of our favorite book sources, right?
Absolutely. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores. So, and if you can check out my website, BeckyGalli.com, BeckyGalli.com. You can learn more about me and other writings that I've had and listen to your podcast too. So you'll be on there as well.
Well, that is great because I've really appreciated this connection with you. I appreciate you, Becky. So many thanks and continued success and more books to come.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm working on it.
Thank you for being here this morning and meeting these wonderful guests who are doing great work and encouraging us in pursuing the same for ourselves. Please check this station's website for the podcasts for more information about these guests, and please share the stories with your family and friends. I'm Kate Daniels. If you'd like to connect with me, simply send me an email, katedaniels@hubbardradio.com. And here's to having your most ideal day.
Thank you for listening to Inspirational Women. Tune in every Sunday morning at this time to hear about those truly empowering the Northwest community, all for the greater good. Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women are a public service of Hubbard Radio Seattle.